Are you listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any other platform where you can leave a rate or review? Do you like what we're doing? If the answer to all of that is yes, please consider quickly giving us a 5-star rate. And if you wouldn't mind leaving us a nice review, we greatly appreciate that as well. Okay, let's do this.
Hello, welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 335 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. Today we're discussing chapter 63 of A Dance with Dragons, which is Victarion 1.
And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you, unless of course you have a Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer tier that includes spoilers. Well, if you listen to that spoiler episode, then we are going to spoil things for you, but regardless, hopefully we'll provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide some additional information about the characters and geography of this chapter. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I just had this thought as we were reading that and making little stumbles as we always do.
We've had lots of time to think this so far. We've been on this call a long time to be only this far in, but keep going.
You know, we could have just pre-recorded that. It just
all this time, yeah. Just have a little sort of AI, a little computer voice come in and go 335.
You're right. Yeah, that would be the part where we would not have necessarily been able to pre-record. But my part that I stumble through, and then your second half.
Yeah, man, that's true. That is all. I think that it's like a live performance, you know. People want to hear the stumbles.
Yeah,
you know?
I guess
Good
so.
job.
Although we try to take all the distracting ones out anyway.
Yeah. Actually, I was thinking as we read it as well, how must Victarion feel about... I mean, essentially, this is the 335th chapter of this book, and he finally gets a POV, you know.
Yeah, well, his... a
named POV.
Yes.
He's been a POV a couple of times. But...
His niece is probably slightly jealous because she still doesn't have a POV.
Still hasn't had one, that's true.
She has POVs, but
yeah.
I don't believe she's had an Asha one or
No,
whatever.
I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
Yeah. Anyway, how are you doing?
Well, I'm all right. I'm pretty good, actually. It's been a hectic few days. One of the things you've got in the thing to discuss later on is Night of the Seven Kingdoms.
Yes.
And last night I was thinking to myself how busy I've been recently, and my yardstick of that was how far I've got in Night of the Seven Kingdoms.
Oh, well, I put it in there hoping you had finished, because we haven't discussed it.
I haven't finished it.
Okay.
I did... spoiler alert for Night of the Seven Kingdoms, I did get to the point where Egg reveals who...
his identity.
Well, he doesn't completely reveal it, but he gives away the game by interfering, yes. That's as far as I've got.
That's when Stacey... Well, anyway, we'll get into it when we get into it, I'm sure.
Okay, right. So yeah, I have a couple of stories left over from last week.
Okay.
I hope I've copied the right two over. You should tell me. If either of these sound familiar, let me know.
Neither look familiar, so
okay.
I think we're good.
So I have a good friend who I won't name because occasionally she gets mad about me telling stories about her.
I know who you are referring to. Yes.
Uh-huh. But this is a nice story. This is a good story, I think. She volunteers at the dog pound all the time. I mean, she walks.
Good for her.
She walks 10 miles a day walking dogs down at the dog pound.
Wow.
And they can only walk them one at a time. So it's like, it's just walking. That's all she does with these random dogs. And she has a very big heart and sort of loses her heart to these dogs all the time. But not all of them get adopted, you know.
Sure.
So it's pretty rough.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But one of the dogs that was there was rescued or sort of delivered, its owner having passed away, and its owner was deaf, and this dog would not stop barking. I mean, it just barked and barked and barked and barked, which I thought on some levels might be kind of funny that the whole time of its life this dog has been barking, and because its owner was deaf they just never knew.
Right. Yeah.
But it wouldn't respond to any verbal command. I mean, you could say, stop, no, down, you know, it just wouldn't respond to any of it. And my friend tried the American Sign Language for no, and the dog stopped barking immediately.
Wow. So the dog knows at least some level of sign language.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And so does your friend, which is, also useful in this situation.
Yeah. Have you been watching DTF St. Louis?
We not yet. We're finishing the pit, and then we will move on to that.
DTF St. Louis is a very interesting show. It's almost kind of, it's sort of a bait and switch. It's not quite what you think it's going to be.
Okay. Well, that's intriguing.
It's intriguing. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's not one to watch with multiple generations of your family, I would say.
Okay. Well, the name of the show had me a bit concerned that
if you can figure out what that stands for, you definitely know. Kids or parents, no, I don't want to watch with either of those people.
Yeah, I planned on watching it, so I'll let you know what I think. But you had mentioned dog walking, and that just reminded me of something that happened last week. So we often take Penny. We'll probably stop because summer is coming and starting to get hot.
It was hot today. Yes, holy moly!
But we take her through this path in the woods, and it's about a 2-mile round trip hike through the woods, not far from our house, just on the other side of the road. And when we're in there, she's old and good, and so we take her off the leash, and she just walks and she sniffs, and we keep walking. Then she runs and catches up. It's very cute, and she has a really good time. And we put her back on the leash if we see someone else coming or whatever.
I mean, she could attack them, take them down.
Just to be respectful, in case someone's afraid of dogs or whatever. But
they'd have to be really afraid of dogs to be afraid of your dog.
And it's pretty deep into the woods. We rarely see somebody. Anyway, but we come out of the woods onto this paved path, and then we walk up the paved path back to the sidewalk that is basically on our road, just on the other side of the main street. That crosses our road.
Yeah. I actually know what you mean.
So normally, when we near the end of the paved path, I put her on the leash, and then, we go about our merry way.
Yeah.
But last week, Stacy and I were talking. We were engrossed in some topic of conversation, and we are just walking down our street on the other side, still on the other side of the main crossing road.
The main road, right.
But we're just walking, and I notice I'm holding the entire leash in my hands. And Penny is just walking along beside us, just happy as a clam. And I'm like, oh my goodness, the dog's not on the leash. So,
and presumably you're walking towards the main street at this point.
Yes, we are.
To cross it, with the eye to cross it. Yes. So, I'm glad you caught that before you got to that point.
Yeah, me too. That could have gone, or before something would have distracted her to run out,
right.
Yeah, so anyway. Bit of a scary moment, and one that we have since made sure that as we're approaching the street.
Yeah. Have a checklist.
Yes, right.
Checklist is basically one thing. Right. Put the dog on the lead.
Yeah.
The other story that cracked me up this week was from, well, not so much the story, it was just the family's reaction to this story. So my sister Sarah is married to Mark. Mark is a listener, so hi Mark.
Hello, Mark.
And Mark was reporting that he had a sporting injury. And Sarah, my sister, she's a nice enough person, but she doesn't ooze sympathy and love and care. That's not really her thing.
Yeah.
And
I know someone like that.
Yeah, a little bit of that. Yeah. When he said sporting injury, she did like a snort noise. Like,
oh no! Was it chest?
It was actually putting his sock on.
Was it? Hey, you never know what's going to trigger an injury.
Exactly. He sort of threw his back out, putting his sock on. But the way she told it was that she was sitting downstairs and he was upstairs getting ready for work, and she heard a thump.
Oh no.
Presumably sounding roughly like a body falling would sound.
Yeah.
Then she's retelling the story, and he's sitting next to her, so he's not actually dead.
Right.
At the time, she didn't know that, but she said, we're like, did you go and check on him? And she's like, I sent him a text. She said, and I called him.
He was upstairs
in the house. He didn't respond. He's just upstairs, just like 10 feet away. He's like, he didn't respond to either of those two things, and you didn't think this was a cause for concern. And so finally she said, I went up there. I thought there must be something wrong. So I went up there, and he was lying face down on the bed, sort of groaning, sort of thing.
No.
And we were just like mercilessly mocking her lack of, medical care and attention that she gave to him. And she said, I will have you know, I cared for a full 2 hours before I just had enough of it. And we then quizzed her about what she did in that 2 hours. And she said, well, I went back downstairs and worked. But at the end of that 2 hours, I'd had enough. It was time for him to get back up.
While I was working, I was caring in my mind, and then I've had enough.
Exactly. So her caring consisted of one phone call, one text, and one climb of the stairs. That's all he got.
Well, he was okay in the end, I guess. So
yeah. I mean, back things aren't nice.
All's well that ends well. Yeah, I pulled out my back to the point where I had to go to the doctor, reaching out to comb Molly's hair when she was little. You just never know what's going to trigger a back to go out.
Yeah. Did you claim it was a sporting injury?
I should have. That would have been way cooler than the truth.
All right, well, let's get down to business. How did we leave Victarion Greyjoy? And for a minute there, I was going to say because he is but actually, since the chat is called Victarion,
right.
It's fairly obvious that he is the POV. Yeah. Last we saw of Victarion, finally, a POV of his own name, he was waiting on the Isle of Cedars for his scattered Iron Fleet. Due primarily to storms, his fleet had diminished from 93 ships down to 54. After a time, he sailed on toward Marine, knowing the Volantene fleet was hot on their heels. His hand, which sustained an injury in a fight ages ago, was not healing. A red wizard was fished out of the ocean, who turned out to be our old friend, the priest of R'hllor, Moqorro, a refugee of the Selasori Koran. Moqorro saved his own life by sort of healing Victarion's hand. In response, Victarion killed his maester, who wasn't curing his hand, and tossed him overboard instead. Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
Okay. The Iron Fleet spot their prey between the Isle of Cedars and the Astapori mainland, just as Moqorro said they would. The trading galley changed course when her captain spotted their danger, but it was to no avail. When brought aboard the Iron Victory, the ship's captain told of Daenerys Targaryen's death and Meereen's new Giscari ruler, Hizdack. Close enough. Victarion had the man's tongue ripped out for lying, and then he had him bound and thrown overboard, a sacrifice to the drowned god.
I hadn't even noticed that wasn't Hizdahr's correct name.
Oh.
It is, because I've got so used to the Giscari names, I was like, oh yeah, Hizdack, that's right. I was like, wait a second, no, you're right. You were right to put that emphasis on it. It is not the right name. So Victarion knows that the Dragon Queen still lives because Moqorro has seen it in his flames. He tells Moqorro his red god will have his due, but the seas are ruled by the drowned god, to which Moqorro responds that there is only R'hllor and the Great Other. Victarion had hoped dressing the Red Priest in Greyjoy gold and black would make Moqorro more palatable to the rest of the Ironborn, but it was a fruitless hope.
Men urge Victarion to give Moqorro to the drowned god, but the priest has proven his worth. He'll keep a wizard just as his brother Euron does. Victarion names the claimed ship Red God's Wrath. The fleet now numbers 54 again. However, after a sudden storm, 3 ships are unaccounted for. No worries. Moqorro tells Victarion he will find the lost ships off the island of Yaros.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
Can I say that when I'm practicing this, I read the whole thing. I don't look at whose paragraphs are whose.
Right.
And I could not get through that previous section. I kept stumbling over Red God's Wrath, and you nailed it first time. Well done, sir.
It's because I didn't think about it, I guess.
Yeah. The fleet snares 3 more ships thanks to more prognostications from Moqorro, a Myrish cog and 2 galleys. The galleys were returning to Nugis to reinforce the Yunkish army with fresh men and supplies. Thanks to the bloody flux taking so many lives, of course, because they're not losing that many through battle.
Right.
These captains too told of Daenerys' death and met the same fate for their lives. After Victarion killed the slavers, he freed the slave rowers. The Dragon Queen frees slaves, and so do I.
Victarion can almost hear the Drowned God's praise, but he can't ignore the work of the Red God. The arm Moqorro healed isn't pretty to look at. It's burned and charred to the point where Victarion, when he makes a fist, the skin smokes and splits. However, the arm is actually now stronger than before. Victarion tells the Dusky Woman that he's backed by 2 gods, making an unstoppable force, before betting her again.
In my mind, Victarion looks like one of those kids who's got the Hulk fists.
Yeah.
That's how I picture him. Yet again, Moqorro's foresight proves accurate. As promised, the lost 3 ships are waiting off the coast of Yaros, and their run of good luck continues. 3 more ships are taken in quick succession. 2 stocked with rare goods and a fishing ketch were added to the growing fleet.
The master of the small fishing ketch tells Victarion of Dany flying away across the Dothraki Sea on the Black Dragon. Victarion wants to know where to find this sea. He'll sail across it and find her. The man laughs and calls him a fool. That seems like a really bad idea. The Dothraki Sea is made of grass. It's shocking to learn that Victarion doesn't tolerate this well and strangles the man to death with his bare, burned hand before having the dead body thrown overboard, another offering to the drowned god.
Is that the second time he's done that? Or have I just read this chapter so many times that I feel like he's done it before?
It's the second time he's killed someone and thrown him overboard for saying things. Actually, it's the third for saying things that he didn't like.
But for calling him a fool.
No,
this is the first one.
This is the only guy.
This is really stuck in my mind because I felt like we've talked about this many times. Moqorro calls the drowned god a demon, a mere thrall to the great other. Victarion tells the priest to be careful with such statements. There are many pious men in the fleet who'd slit Moqorro's throat if they overheard such blasphemy. Moqorro's red god will have his due. Moqorro has no doubts. R'hllor has shown him Victarion's worth in the form of the glory that awaits the captain. Victarion enjoys hearing this. That night, he tells the Dusky Woman he will do what even his brother Balon could not do, free the Iron Islands from the rule of the Iron Throne. He'll make the Dragon Woman his, and she'll bear him sons.
As they near the coast of Yunkai, Victarion takes the fleet into deeper waters to avoid the heavy ship traffic between Yunkai and Meereen. Still, they take a slaver ship filled with 20 perfumed boys and 80 girls en route to the pillow houses of Lys. Again, Victarion kills the slavers and frees the slave rowers. He throws the boys into the sea. They're unnatural and too stinky. The women he divides up among his captains. All except the 7 prettiest girls. Those he keeps for himself.
Not for the reasons you might expect. His Dusky Woman is keeping him satisfied until he meets his queen. He tells his men of the challenges and glory that await them. They will take no quarter from their enemy. They are Ironborn, and 2 gods watch over them. When the cheers subside, he has the 7 girls loaded into the fishing ketch, and it's pushed out to sea before he lights the ship on fire as a sacrifice to both the Red God and the Drowned God. A great wind rises up, pushing them toward their destination.
That night, Victarion shows Moqorro the dragon horn his brother Euron gave him. He tells of the awful sound it made when the man blew it at the Kingsmoot, and how the man who blew it died, burned up inside. Moqorro reads the glyphs. The horn is named Dragonbinder. No mortal man shall sound it and live. Victarion thinks of how Euron swore this horn would bind dragons to him, but all his brother's gifts are poisoned. Moqorro clarifies. It doesn't matter who blows the horn. The dragon will come to the horn's master. Victarion must claim the horn with blood.
One of those last sentences.
Yeah,
Portentous.
indeed.
But actually, so the very first comment I have here is that this is the third chapter in a row we've had characters mangling people's names. But actually, I wasn't referring to Histar because I'd missed that entirely. But it's the Ironborn can't say Moqorro, so they've given him the handle Dark Flame. Is that right?
They call him Black Flame, which is very
Black
close to what Quaithe had told Dany. Soon will come the Kraken and Black Flame, or Black Flame, or Dark Flame, and the Kraken. So
right.
Very, very similar to what they're calling him here.
Yeah. We may be simplifying Moqorro, but it doesn't seem that hard to me.
No, I think it was someone, the stammerer, that couldn't pronounce it. And
he might give everyone nicknames.
Yes, he might. Probably not Victarion. I'm guessing unless you call him Iron Captain or Your Grace.
Unless Victarion is one of the words you really struggle over, and then you might want to come up with something else.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, that could be a problem as well.
So, no, as we always say, when R'hllor comes into this story, he brings the bacon.
Yes.
Things have definitely been improving for Victarion. You think his fleet was... look, it was storm-wrecked. That's why the fleet was smaller, and they had some victories along the way, but now it's just, this whole chapter was just victory after victory,
right,
and sort of like growing the fleet back up to a formidable size. I do wonder if they have the people to really man this fleet, because
good point.
The rowers might join your side because you're saying to them, look, you were slaves but now you're free, stay on that bench and keep rowing. Your life isn't going to change that much in the short term.
Right. Yes. For the moment, things look just like they did before. But
he kills the officer class of these ships.
Yeah.
So does he have the manpower to actually make these ships? Because if I'm a rower on those ships and no one's really guiding me, am I going to ram a ship with my ship? No, I don't think so. That sounds pretty dangerous. Am I going to be at the forefront of the battle, or am I going to be doing the whole facing one way and rowing the other?
Right. No, I hadn't thought about that. That actually is a concern. He's only got a finite amount of men.
Yeah, but maybe that's the thing. Maybe the Ironborn are all wannabe captains,
Yeah.
So basically everyone on the ship is ready to be the captain of one of these taken ships.
Yeah.
So that's probably what happens.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But anyway, just generally, things are on the upturn. He's in physical better health. He's clearly in a better mental state.
Right.
He's having his way with the Dusky Woman after previously treating her basically as a silent nursemaid.
Yeah. It makes me wonder, what do you think R'hllor is? Because no other god or gods are so willing to get involved in this story. We've seen the Weirwood network with Bran and warging of the old gods, but
the thing about that is that a god, or is that a supernatural element of the world?
Yeah, exactly. Because the god's not necessarily doing anything in those situations.
The network is available to you if you know how to use it, and the learned and the faithful perhaps can figure out how to learn how to use it. But R'hllor isn't what I would describe as an interventionist god.
Yes.
Someone who, if you ask him to do something, if he's in the right mood and you give him the right payment for it, he'll do it for you.
Yeah, it just makes me wonder, is he truly the one true god, or are we talking about some kind of wizardry masquerading as a god here?
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes.
I don't know. That's an interesting question. So are you saying that perhaps all of the Red Priests have some kind of special powers, which may be magical of some sort, but it isn't really that they're beseeching a god who is then intervening, but it is they who are pulling tricks on the people?
Or at least using some sort of magical element. We've been in Melisandre's head, which is the closest we've gotten to knowing the truth. And she seems to truly believe that she is interacting with a god, but she's been trained by someone who's been trained by someone.
Right.
And maybe what is considered a religion is actually just teaching people how to use these magical elements.
See, R'hllor is a fascinating part of this book because on many levels, like you say, he's the one interventionist god. He's the one who does something. He's the one who actually acts upon his followers' requirements and requests.
Right.
And his prophecies appear to match the reality in the sense that it does seem that R'hllor is real and is doing something, and the Great Other is real and is happening. And so this coming together of the two does appear to be... Generally speaking, I'm not a very religious person. I mean, I understand people's religion. I'm not very religious. But what would make me religious is a miracle. If someone could show me a miracle,
sure, yeah,
I would become religious. I would convert instantly. But nobody has ever shown me a miracle. They've described miracles to me, but I'm skeptical. I'm a naturally skeptical person.
Right.
But R'hllor, if you hang around with the Red Priest of R'hllor, you're going to get like 2 a week. You're going to be like, eventually, you're going to be like, well, I'm sorry, but I actually do believe this guy's really doing something.
Yeah, when Thoros of Myr brings Beric Dondarrion back to life over and over again.
Just one time.
Yes.
That's all it would take. No, that's not true. It would take 2 times, because one time I'd be like, what did I drink last night? I could have sworn he was dead.
When you're Davos and you're rowing that boat and Melisandre births a shadow assassin.
Right, that kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah. But that's an interesting one, because that one, I wouldn't. Does Davos think she's a witch?
Right.
That's
what
witchcraft.
I mean. Yeah, she's using some sort of magical elements to make these things happen. She believes that it's a god. I just don't know yet what I think R'hllor actually is. And it also seems like we've only met a handful of Red Priests, but they all seem to have different abilities. Thoros of Myr can bring a man and a woman. Catelyn Stark brought back to life. Yep. Moqorro can heal, sort of, at least prevent Victarion from dying by healing this hand. And he seems to be significantly, I don't know. His percentage of success of what he's seeing in the fires seems to be better than Melisandre's.
Oh, heck yeah. He's nailing it. Oh, those 3 ships are over there. Don't worry about them.
So precise.
Right. That one was impressive. His you'll find some ships that way. Yeah. Point in the, Slaver's Bay, you point in a direction, you'll find ships eventually.
Right. But he's saying you will find your 3 lost ships off the coast of the island of Yaros. And there they are waiting. So when he tells you things like, Daenerys Targaryen is alive, I've seen her in my flames, you would believe him.
Especially if you then pepper that with, and I've seen your glory in there too. Well, hello.
Yes.
Hello, Moqorro. Tell me more of this, Daenerys. More about my glory,
right,
please.
Let's hear about that again.
So, so Victarion is coming round to this, again, like me. You demonstrate the power of your god and you gain an adherent. And Victarion is falling for it. Well, not falling for it. He's becoming. He's coming round to that. I think he's smart to keep both gods because he can't alienate his men at this point. Right. It would be a bad idea. But maybe once on dry land, he says, "Look, Drowned God never did anything for me. The Drowned God just gave me an excuse to push people overboard. But this guy fixes my problems. Feel that wind blowing us to Marine?
Yeah.
Where was that?
Where was that from the Drowned God when we were in that storm getting all decimated?
It'd be funny, actually, if when those poor girls were set on fire, I'm guessing they jumped in the water at that point. If the Drowned God went, "Oh, you want me?" and he blew them forward and everyone thought it was R'hllor.
That would, attributed it to the wrong god, I guess.
Dang, I can't catch a break. That R'hllor fella gets all the credit.
Yeah, so he's appeasing the Drowned God with captives because he's Ironborn, right? I mean, that's all he's known. But he's putting a more and more stock in R'hllor. He's trying to get the men to at least accept Moqorro at some level. So he's dressing him in his own,
not killing him level.
Yes, he's dressing Moqorro in the Greyjoy colors of black and gold, hoping to appeal to the men, which fails because he just looks more menacing, all in black with his flame tattooed face.
Yes. You can't really disguise Moqorro amongst the Ironborn. I don't think.
No, yeah, he's sticking out like a sore thumb with those red tattoos all over his face. But he puts puts these 7 most beautiful girls to the flame to sacrifice to R'hllor. But Moqorro says that the drowned god is just a demon, a thrall of the other. And it doesn't seem like Victarion cares all that much. All he says is, careful talking like that around the other men, not, hey, I don't want to hear that kind of blasphemy. So clearly he's not the most pious of Ironborn. So I'm wondering if Moqorro's usefulness and what he's seen from the drowned god is actually converting him slowly to...
That's what I'm saying, and I'm saying, I mean, Victarion gets a bit of a bad rap from you and I for being a bit dumb, but in actual fact, there's nothing dumb about having a religion that's never done anything for you, and then finding a religion that keeps on delivering and switching over to that religion. That's actually called sensible.
Yeah. It's certainly you couldn't fault him for feeling that way. That's for sure.
Right. Worst case scenario, he dies by drowning, and then he faces the drowned god, and the drowned god says, "Well, what do you think now? You should have tried harder, is what I think.
You should have been more angry when Moqorro called me a demon."
Yeah.
He thinks that he considers himself and the Ironborn in general at this point backed by 2 gods. That 2 gods are overlooking us, is what he says in that impassioned speech at the end of the chapter. And a cheer goes up, which I felt kind of surprised by when he said, "We're the Ironborn, we're backed by 2 gods." And I wonder if a lot of people were like, "What now?"
Well, but they must see the successes they're having since they brought Moqorro aboard.
Right.
I mean, like, the whole vibe of it has changed since Moqorro arrived. I totally get it. And by saying we've got 2 gods on our side, you're not saying, hey, I'm asking you to convert. You're just saying, we got our god, we got this guy's god, and we're winning.
Yeah, I wondered the same thing. Maybe Moqorro's successes has started to maybe not make converts of everyone, but at least, hey, this is working. Let's let this guy continue to help
tolerate him. Yeah. So Victarion tells the Dusky Woman, this is your point, actually, I'm going to read out what you wrote, but he confides in the Dusky Woman an awful lot, but she was a gift from Euron. Is it dangerous? Now, when I read that, I then added a note to it, which says she's missing a tongue and they're an ocean away from Euron. Right. So that's pretty safe, you would think.
So my question is, why did Euron give her to Victarion? Was it simply sweetening the pot to get Victarion to accept this long, dangerous journey? Or is there something more going on here? I don't know what. Like you said, what's she going to do? She doesn't have a cage of ravens that she can send back information. Whether she can actually not speak, I don't think she has a tongue, I guess. I mean, you could tell whether someone has a tongue.
Yeah, I believe she is missing a tongue. She's not just not talking to Victarion.
Right. So she can't speak, but that
would be funny. if they finally meet back up with Euron and she goes, "You should hear what that guy's been saying about you."
Right.
He's like, "Wait a minute, where did that come from?"
Now, no one's...
Oh, maybe she can, put her tongue back to the back of her throat so it looks like she's missing her tongue. Yeah.
She's got quite the parlor trick there. That doesn't mean she can't write things down, I guess, but...
True. But again, like you said, there's no way for that writing to reach Euron unless they get to Euron. But then I hadn't thought about the other side of that, which is she there to perform a task for Euron?
Right.
But at the same time, what would that be? I mean, Euron has sent Victarion on a fool's errand, but a literal errand. Bring Daenerys back.
Yes.
What is she going to do? Like, stab him in the back when they're 10 feet from home? I mean...
The best I could come up with is, could she secretly be the master of the horn? So that if the horn gets blown, the dragons are bound to her and she is in some way bound to Euron. That is really out of left field, but...
Or, very similar to that, if she's bound to Euron in some way, if she blows the horn, do the dragons bind to Euron even though he's not there?
Yeah, that could be too. Yeah.
Can you blow the horn without a tongue?
I hope they practice, if so.
Yeah. Imagine if you're her and they're like, can you blow that without a tongue? You're like, no. I tried my best. But
yeah, sorry. It won't be me. Sorry, can't be me.
Straddling the smoking carcass of the last guy to blow.
Right.
So, yeah, Victarion doesn't like to receive bad news.
No,
Daenerys being
he doesn't.
dead is what he would consider bad news. And at first I thought this was indicative of him, the fact that he kept killing people for doing that, for saying that she was dead, who weren't lying to him. They were telling him their truth from their understanding that she'd been killed by the dragon. And I thought that his killing them was a little bit rash because... they're not necessarily lying to you. But what I didn't realize was that Moqorro had been telling him, I've seen her, she ain't dead. And that's going to make him, why are you telling me lies? You could have a conversation and get to the bottom of it. Well, I heard it from a fisherman who saw it from a thing.
Yeah, I heard it from this guy. I heard it from this guy.
Yeah. Or just push him overboard if that's what you think is best.
I do have to say, that fishing boat captain who calls Victarion a fool and laughs at him, he has to be dumber than Fat Tom. Do you recall when we discussed how if Fat Tom is nicknamed Fat Tom, he must
be very, very fat.
Because, I mean, so what happens is he says, we discussed it in the summary, that she flew on her dragon across the Dothraki Sea. Of course, Victarion hears the word sea and thinks, no big deal. Where is the sea? I'll sail across it. And this fishing boat captain who's had his ship taken, who is standing in front of his captor, surrounded by enemies,
whose right hand is smoking.
Yes, good addition. Good point.
At whose left hand is a 6'6", black-skinned, red flame tattooed monster.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and he
You're taking
laughs.
it upon yourself to do a bit of sass at this point. You're like, yeah. I bet this guy's got a sense of humor. Let's see if I call him a fool, how that goes.
I almost considered it pedantry that someone would have that kind of reaction in that situation.
If I were him, I would be hesitant to even say, point of order, oh great captain.
Right.
But the Dothraki Sea is actually land, it's grass. They're idiots. Yeah. Those people are idiots. I mean, you would not believe how
clearly
stupid they are.
It's not a sea.
Clearly not a sea.
I can understand your confusion.
Totally understood why you said that.
Right. I was thinking the only justification I could have is, one, he just lost it, He knew it was hopeless and just snapped and just laughed and called him a fool. Or I've got one for you. I'm going to interject before your or. Okay.
He recognized Moqorro as a priest of the Red God.
Okay.
That's what Moqorro looks like. Yeah, even though he wasn't wearing the red robes, he's got the tattooed face.
Sure.
So he knows.
Yeah.
And he knows what those people do to prisoners.
Yep.
And he goaded Victarion into killing him.
That was my second option. Yes. Just like the sergeant from the last chapter.
Before I tell that joke, though, I think I go with... Before I go any further, I have a comment about your sailing to the Dothraki Sea. But what's your plans for me?
Before I tell you,
what's next? I could help captain that boat. I'm very good. I know it inside and out. I could definitely help you with that. If the answer is yes, you want me to continue as a co-captain. In that case, let me tell you, the Dothraki Sea, those people are idiots.
Although,
but if it's the Nightfires for me, then you, sir, are a fool.
Yeah. Although that's not the ship you want to be captaining, because that's the ship he loaded the poor 7 girls onto to sacrifice to R'hllor and the drowned god. But yeah, I mean, it's not pedantry because people, he was in a life and death situation, and you never know how you're going to react. But
I get what you're saying, though.
Yeah.
I tell you, it stuck in my head so much that I thought we'd already had this discussion.
I must
have dreamt us talking about this.
I do know that we have previously, it's come up in previous Victarion chapters, that he doesn't like laughter because he's insecure about being the butt of jokes. Yeah. So it's possible that something like this may have come up in a previous Victarion chapter.
I think so. I remember what you're talking about now, yeah. So, you just mentioned the slave girls getting burnt to death. Sometimes we forget just how truly sick the R'hllor religion is.
Yeah.
I mean, they burned 7 innocent kids just as and the thing is, it wasn't even a sacrifice asking for something. It was a thank you for all the good things that have happened. Now, what kind of god needs that?
Right.
You're a god. You don't need thanks. You're a god. Get used to being taken for granted. That's what people do to gods.
Yeah. Right.
I do wonder sometimes if a god is sickened and horrified by what their followers do for them. And then I was thinking to myself, well, this is just what R'hllor is. I mean, this is what R'hllor's religion is about. You burn stuff and I give you stuff. You burn something. If the thing you burn is more valuable, you'll get something better.
Yeah.
If it's a living sacrifice, even better. If it's a human sacrifice, even better. If it's a royal sacrifice, top notch. That's what I'm looking for.
King's blood. Yeah.
King's blood. That's what I want. But then I started thinking about it, and I was like, well, actually, maybe this is just a phase in the worship of R'hllor, because in our world, Christianity, for example, went through quite a period where they would burn people for heresy.
Right.
Now, that wasn't an offering, it was burnt, but there was a lot of it. And the Christian God that I understand, probably wouldn't have been like, I was trying to think of him as being like Suggs in the last chapter, like pressed up against the fire, enjoying the flames. Yeah. But that's not how I understand Christianity to be.
I agree. Right.
And that's sort of like that. What now, looking back on that period, looks like a wholesale abandonment of Christian values. At the time, was pure orthodoxy. That's what. If you were a Christian, that's what you thought was the right thing to do. And so maybe R'hllor is just going through that phase at the moment.
That makes a lot of sense. I had not thought of that. Yeah, I like your thought there.
I don't like any bit of it.
Well, no, I don't.
Gruesome.
No, it's awful. But I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. Would be a better way for me to say that.
Well, it'd be strange if that was the case. So Moqorro's seen something in Victarion. He is bigging him up to save his own skin.
Sure.
Moqorro's not stupid.
Right.
But he does seem to think that he's important and that Victarion's story is intertwined with Daenerys's. Then it occurred to me, when I got to that point, I thought, well, maybe is he just using Victarion as a stepping stone to get himself to Daenerys' side?
Yeah, well, so what he's doing here is really intriguing because he was sent by Benero, the high priest of R'hllor in Volantis, sorry, drew a blank on the word there, to guide and help Dany. He was on the Solisori Quran knowing that it wouldn't reach Karth.
Yeah.
And when he was picked up by, I think it was Vol, last chapter, Vol said, I almost killed him. Except for that, he knows things. He knows we're sailing to Slaver's Bay. He knew that you would be here at the Isle of Cedars, and he told us that you would die if we didn't bring him to you. So, Bonero or someone must have seen Victarion as part of this ultimate success plan, I guess, because it seems like that was the plan all along. I don't imagine Moqorro was looking at the flames while he was clinging to that piece of driftwood. He was wishing for flames, I'm sure.
Must have been some pre-flames.
Yes,
there, yeah.
He must have seen it beforehand. So he must have known going in, I'm destined to be found by the Iron Fleet and taken to Victarion, and something about him is going to lead to whatever it is we're trying to do. Possibly, binding dragons would definitely get Dany's attention, and if you're associated with the guy who's able to do that, good or bad, Daenerys might not be a fan of that, but you're going to get noticed.
Yeah, but there is a possibility that what he has foreseen in the flames is that without Victarion, he's not getting to Meereen.
Yeah.
Right, so he needs Victarion. Okay, so that's step one. And secondly, Victarion happens to be carrying with him the most valuable object imaginable in this world right now, which is a horn that will bind the dragons to your will.
There you go. Yeah.
And now you've got a way not only to get to Daenerys, but to actually have control over Daenerys when you get there. Because you can, either steal her dragons or teach her how to use her dragons.
Yeah, Victarion thinks in this chapter that Moqorro knows about dragon kind. So we've not really been exposed to that. We've not heard him particularly say anything that is wise and knowledgeable about dragons, but that doesn't mean they haven't had conversations about it we weren't privy to.
Yeah. So it's not crystal clear, but it does. He's certainly saying the right things to make Victarion, whose POV we're talking from here, believe that Victarion is an important part of this story, and that's an interesting twist that he is.
Yeah.
Because certainly for the first 4 books of this series, it didn't feel like Victarion was going to be a very important character in the books.
Right. He was a side character, basically.
Yeah. Just one comment. I feel like we're being very woke tonight, actually talking religion and things like that. But just a comment about the male psyche. So Victarion sleeps with the dusky woman,
which we confirmed this chapter. Last chapter, it was unclear because he kept thinking about how all of Euron's gifts are poisoned, and so it wasn't clear whether they were having a sexual relationship or whether they were having sex. It doesn't seem like much of a relationship here.
Now with Moqorro on hand, he can survive whatever poison he might get from sleeping with her, so he's definitely sleeping with her.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. I see.
But as he talks to her, he's sort of just talking about all of his successes and having 2 gods on his side and all this kind of thing to her. He arouses himself again so that he has sex with her again for the second time in quick succession.
Yeah.
And it just as I read it, I could totally see it from a male perspective. I could totally see how that kind of self-belief would give you the energy and impetus to do that again in quick succession. And I remember thinking to myself, God, we're pathetic, aren't we? But, but at the same time, I was like, that is a true piece of writing, because as he said those stirring words about himself and how he was chosen by the gods, he was like, she's probably going to want that again, isn't she?
Oh, yeah, I totally follow your logic there. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you're not buying into it. You're not admitting that it would do the same for you.
Oh no, I'm not denying that. I
let that idiot hang himself.
I do. When I said they were having a sexual relationship, obviously there's not a relationship. She doesn't seem to have choice in the matter. So I want to make that clear.
Not an awful lot. Yes. Yeah.
But they're getting pretty close to their final destination here in Meereen. They start when this chapter starts. They're on the north side of the Isle of Cedars when they take their first ship. And when the chapter ends, they're due east of Yunkai, and now all that is between them and Meereen is Meereen. There's nothing. There's no major landmarks left. So they're nearing the end here, and they begin the chapter with 53 ships. They had 54 when they were at the Isle of Cedars, but they left 1 ship there to collect any other ships that come along. So they're at 53. And they end the chapter at 61. Of course, then they burned the fishing.
Yeah, back down to 60 again.
So they're back down to 60, I guess. And certainly there could be a lot of fluctuation now as they get closer to Meereen, because they're gonna generally face more warships, so they could lose ships. But they also might come across more of these other kind of ships that they can claim easily and continue to grow their fleet.
Yeah. And this as they close the gap and as they do head towards Meereen and with a potential meetup with Daenerys, does make me wonder about the very last part of the chapter about the horn and Moqorro's assessment that you don't have to be the one that blows it to be the lord of it. But you have to remind me of the exact wording here. He said
it doesn't matter who blows it. The dragons are bound to the master of the horn.
Master of the horn.
And you have to claim it with blood. You must
claim the horn with blood.
Yeah.
What does he mean?
That
What's your theory there, my friend?
Yeah. How do you claim it with blood? Do you have to kill the previous master? If so, who's the previous master? Is that Euron? He's awfully far away. So, since it's in Victarion's possession, does that make him the master? If so, do you claim it with blood by some personal sacrifice, like cutting off that burned arm, or like a bloodletting, like Melisandre and her leeches with the king's blood? That is very unclear.
Right, or is the sacrifice of the poor sucker who blew it? Is that the...
Yeah.
Is it as simple as that? Find someone who you can get to do this, own them, be their boss, and make them do it, and then you fulfill all the aspects of this, which is you're the master of the horn, and a sacrifice of blood was made to bind the dragons to you.
That makes sense. Yeah, I could see that. Until you consider the horn, I felt like wooing Daenerys seemed out of reach for Victarion. He has a big fleet, and that would be useful, but not useful enough to marry her, for her to marry him,
Yeah. She's not going to take one look at the size of his fleet and say, oh, we're going to get married.
Right. But this horn adds a wrinkle.
Oh,
because if it binds dragons to him, then they become connected.
Right.
Either good or bad. Yeah. Either she's going to fight him on this because she doesn't want to give up that level of control, possibly. We don't know what level of control it would be, but she doesn't want to give up ultimate control of her dragons, so...
Yeah, you assume if there's only one master of the horn, then that person has control over all the dragons, could perhaps delegate a dragon down to someone else, but at the same time, they're the master.
Yeah. Right, and she's not going to... She's a Targaryen. She's the dragon. She's not going to want to give up that kind of control.
Would also be interesting if she and Drogon are off, learning aerobatics, and they come back, and the horn has its effect on the other two.
Right.
But Drogon is like, wait a minute, I'm bound to this woman, I'm not bound to you.
Yeah.
So maybe it only affects bonded dragons.
Yeah, right.
Unclaimed dragons. So maybe, yeah.
Now, so we've got two suitors here. We've got the Iron and the Spurned, meaning Victarion and Quentin. Sorry, Drew.
Quentin.
Yeah, I almost called him Martin. Martin Martell. That doesn't make any sense. Anyway, and they're both looking to win Daenerys through her dragons. One is planning on using his ancestral Targaryen blood, and the other, this Valyrian horn.
Is that the blood connection? You must claim the horn with blood, meaning you must have Targaryen blood.
Oh.
Maybe someone with Targaryen blood can blow the horn safely.
Yeah. Maybe that's Quentin's role.
They get together and they're like, look, he doesn't tell Quentin what happens with the blowing of the horn, but just tells him, Moqorro, tell him what it says on this horn. It says, whoever blows this will be in charge of the dragons.
Right. Yeah, don't worry about the rest of that.
Yeah.
It's like
small
that,
print.
Yeah, it's like when you're filling out forms and they give you a summary of what that huge form... Yeah, it just means this. Just sign it. Speaking of those glyphs, when Moqorro reads them, he says it tells him much and more. And that's a very frequent refrain from Melisandre.
Everybody.
As well. Yeah. Well,
everybody in this book says it.
Yeah. So And Melisandre says, or at least she thought in her head during her POV, that she does it to sound more knowledgeable. So then I was wondering, is Moqorro making up what he's reading? Secretly wants Victarion to blow this horn just to see what happens? Or
much and more is like I'm just going to say that while I think of what it might have said.
Right, yeah. Stalling tactic. While I can think of something.
I really should have practiced my Valyrian. Well, that's excellent. Right, it's time for some spoilers. Remember, if you join the Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer tiers at the upper levels, you get the spoilers. And you can try any tier of the Buy Me a Coffee Sustainers for a week for free. All right, excellent. Good spoilers.
Thank you.
We're tapping into the future in the spoilers, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, we are.
All right, and now to the past. What do we have for background?
Okay, so when Victarion gave his impassioned speech before sacrificing the poor 7 girls, he talked about how they'd soon face enemy ships from cities across Slaver's Bay all the way to Karth. One of the cities he mentioned was Illyria. We've talked about Tolos and Menteris, which both sit on Slaver's Bay, but we haven't talked much about Illyria. At least I don't recall us having done that.
No.
If we have.
To me, it sounds brand new, so go on.
Well, there isn't a great deal to tell, but
that's probably why we dropped it.
Yeah. I'll fill you in on what I can. So Illyria is an island city located on the western side of Slaver's Bay, which is the opposite side from the 3 major slaver cities. It's just off the coast of the Lands of the Long Summer, which is the name of the region north of the ruins of Illyria on the Valyrian Peninsula. And speaking of old Valyria, the island of Illyria was founded by the Valyrians, and it was those Valyrians who governed the city. However, despite not having self-rule, the island was known to be both rich and glorious. Also, despite its close proximity to Valyria, the city wasn't destroyed by the Doom, unlike another island in the bay, the Isle of Cedars, which we learned last chapter, the terrible fate that island met. I'm conjecturing here, but possibly it's because whereas the Isle of Cedars sits right out in the bay, Illyria sits in its own little bay off of the main bay. So maybe the island was protected by the peninsula that juts out south of it, which cuts it off between Illyria and Valyria. That's just conjecture.
Yeah. It kind of put me in mind, actually, just thinking about the sort of doom of Valyria. Remember I went to Santorini in Greece?
I do.
And that is actually just the rim of a volcano. The whole island is just the rim of one gigantic volcano that it blew up during human history, but a long time ago. But they think it was probably the biggest volcano in human history.
Wow.
The crater it's unimaginably vast. I mean, absolutely huge. They've dated the volcano when it blew up, and they've got sort of like, wood tree rings from around the world, and the whole world was affected by that explosion.
Oh,
like for like 4 years.
Fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Goodness, that's also terrifying.
Yeah. But apparently the island was occupied before the volcano blew. But they believe the people got off. They believe the people actually sailed away because they felt the ground, they felt it coming. And they were like,
it's time to go.
In the run up to it, there'd been some minor eruptions and stuff like that.
Well,
and then
good.
The whole thing.
I hope that's the case.
They're dead now.
Well, yes.
But it was 2,600 years ago.
For their sake, I hope that was the case.
Yeah. If it blew up as big as it must have blown up, they probably weren't safe unless they went a long way away.
Yeah.
They would have to go round the corner to Illyria, is what I'm saying. That's what I'm getting at.
That's the only safe place, really.
Yeah. All right, comparison with the television show, Victarion and Moqorro and the dragon binding horn are all completely dropped.
Right.
So I got nothing here at all to tell you about. This just didn't happen, which is a shame. It's a shame on multiple levels, because every time the TV series makes a decision to drop storyline, it makes me think that storyline is not going anywhere in the book, because otherwise George Martin would have told them to keep it.
Yeah. That's
such a disappointment. I mean,
good point.
Quentin Martell, and what's the other one?
Aegon. Yeah.
I mean, all of those are completely dropped from the TV show, so you're like, they mustn't matter. Otherwise, he would have said keep them in.
Yeah, I can
but
understand
maybe,
that.
again, as we've said many times, maybe he learned his lesson. Maybe this is why the Winds of Winter is taking so long, because he's having to start again.
Right.
Big up these storylines that were going to go, be dead ends.
Yeah, that is all possible. That could be. He's like, oh no, I got to figure out how to work these in better.
And they're all great storylines.
They are. Absolutely.
They are all superb, and they all add to the rich tapestry of the Daenerys story, because the Daenerys story by herself is kind of it's a little bit dull. It's better now she's riding a dragon, but she flew off into the sunset. We'll never see her again.
Haven't seen her since.
All right, Pedantry Corner. As you say, people shouldn't call him a fool while they're at knife point in front of him. He doesn't come across as a nice guy.
Oh, but there's just so many other ways around that. Just, no, you misunderstood me.
Yeah, exactly.
It's called a sea, but it's an inland sea made of grass.
Just genuine, general politeness.
Yeah.
You should have said that.
Right.
If it was your buddy who made that mistake, you'd be like, it'd be rude to call him a fool.
Right.
All right, news and notes. So I didn't know this until I read the news and notes, but there's been a rumor floating around that George Martin finished The Winds of Winter. Calm yourselves. Entertainment Weekly asked the publisher Bantam directly. Bantam are his publisher, they didn't just ask a random book publisher if this was true. They asked his book publisher. They said false. The online chatter you are seeing regarding a supposed leak is false. So, oh well.
There is conjecture that, there's always conjecture, but the fandom is hopeful. We're only into April of 2026, so
it might be this year.
Yeah, there's always that hope that this is going to be the year.
Wow,
it won't be once we get to November or so. Then we'll be next year will be the year.
Yeah. Because if it is this year, they'll announce it by the middle of summer, I would think, because they'll want the Christmas orders in.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So, thoughts on Knights of the Seven Kingdoms? So you finished it.
I did. Yes.
And go on. I mean, just give me your overall impressions. You don't have to ruin it for me. I know what's going to happen, I think. Oh, you did good. I will say I surprised myself by how much I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I've always been a big Dunk and Egg fan.
You are a big Dunk and Egg fan, more than me.
I often like the more wholesome.
Yeah, you do.
Gravitate, I'm such a sap that way.
You are. If it's sweet and syrupy, you're going to fall for it every time.
Not that this is entirely sweet and syrupy, but we were discussing on the Discord server that maybe they missed an opportunity here by not making this more a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, more of a family show.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's got to have an edge,
right.
The jousting has to end in death.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
Sure, right.
And it's hard to make that a kid's show. It's hard to say, come on, everyone, let's gather together to watch this horse get kebabbed.
I will say the character Egg makes the show for me. First of all, the kid is so adorable. I just want to...
I knew you'd find him adorable. He is adorable, I will admit, but I can parcel out this. I can go, that kid is adorable, and then sort of partition that from my feelings. There's no firewall. You're like, oh, that kid's adorable.
He is, and he's such a good actor. He is a fantastic actor, and he's just the way. His character just makes the show for me, beyond the fact that he's an adorable little kid. Even just the way there's a scene where he's trying to teach this horse to do something.
Horse.
Yes, the way he keeps shouting with such energy at the horse is just... he endeared me. To him and the show.
Well, good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Like I said, I'm 3 in, and I'm enjoying it a lot, and I'm looking forward to. And it's been such a long time since I've read it. I'm kind of like hazy on where it's headed, and like the reveal, the big egg reveal, just happened, and I had no notion of that when that was going to happen. So it was kind of like a surprise to me. Yeah, I couldn't remember that it was going to happen.
Why am I saying really? Like, this is a big shock.
Come on, you've met me. I mean, on some levels, this is the truth. This is the truth. I couldn't remember if he ever revealed it. I thought Dunk might have become a Kingsguard, not knowing.
This guy looks an awful lot like someone I used to know.
Logically, I was going to piece it together that he did find out.
Yeah.
Well, those who have the upper tiers of the Buy Me Coffee Sustainers who get the Sustainer calls can join us on April 21st, Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and mock me for my inability to remember things that I've read.
And we can have a discussion, for the most part, about Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Last time, neither of us had finished it. So
you can spoil it for me. It won't make any difference.
It was the reveal that hooked Stacey. She was she's spending a lot of time on her phone.
She wouldn't know who the heck he was, right?
Yeah, she was just like, what is the point of this story, kind of?
Yeah. And actually, that's a good point. It had to come reasonably soon for the unaware.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you really would be like, what is this story about?
Right. So, yeah, that's when she was like, what? She kept asking me, what was there a twist here? And I was like, just watch the show. Just things will happen.
I feel like every time you two watch a show, that bit of conversation, and the thing is, you don't need the words, you just need a tone of voice. The Stacey going, and you going,
the words can interchange, but it's the same.
Exactly.
The tone.
Like Charlie Brown listening to the teacher.
She does it all the time, and she's like, "I'll just Google it." And I was like, "What? Don't." The director has a reason for the pacing. Just let it unfold.
I love her sort of like, sort of zero-sum game of, I'm just going to Google it and ruin it for myself.
Right.
Why?
She does it all the time with so many shows. And then she'll be like, oh my goodness. I'm like, well, don't tell me.
That reminds me of Blazing Saddles. When they all pull their gun on the new sheriff and he outwits them by pulling the gun on himself. She's the sheriff. If you don't tell me what's going to happen, I'm going to find out for myself. Let's conclude this one. Enough of this frivolity. So Victarion is retooling the fleet, and that could come in handy because, the one thing we're kind of, for example, he's nervous to skirt the coastline here,
right?
Because along the coastline between Yunkai and Marine is so busy with ships that there's too many ships for him to steal them all. I mean, he's making hay on stealing ships out in the water, but there's so many that he can't face it, even though he's got a fleet of 60 now. So he's moving out into the deeper water to sort of come to Marine unmolested. But when he gets to Marine, he's going to find a big old naval blockade there, and he needs to be, well, either clever or extremely violent to get through all
right.
that.
Yeah, well said. Those are about his two options. I do wonder what his plan is, because you show up with, well, at the moment, 53 longships? You're going to get noticed.
Right. I mean, it sort of depends, though, because I don't really know what these navies are like. I mean, like I think of like the British Navy, sort of like in the sort of like golden age of sail. They would be recognizable. They would be ships that were British made, and they would be flying British colours.
Right.
No one would know exactly what they were. Are the Yunkaiish like that? It feels like it's going to be more ragtag than that.
Yeah, we don't really know. We haven't gotten a lot of information about the
And so these long
naval
ships might
ships.
just fit in, like, hey, more.
Right.
It's a weird design. I wonder why they're here. That kind of...
Maybe that's how it's gonna play out. But yeah, like you said, he's collecting non-long ships, so maybe he can use those in some way.
Right, yeah. And he is kind of unintentionally, he notices it himself, mimicking Daenerys' story. He's moving towards Meereen, freeing slaves and killing slavers.
Right.
Which is kind of Daenerys' thing. His freeing slaves is slightly less emancipating than Daenerys' version, because the galley slaves are no longer slaves, but they are going to have to keep rowing for the Ironborn as free men. But I'm not sure exactly how that's different from being a slave. Maybe they don't whip them as much. They ask them to row.
Yeah, I was wondering, he says, you are free men. But I wonder how thralls feel about that. Because they're not necessarily free men. They're thralls. They're not true Ironborn. So
I guess maybe he just... The Ironborn rule is you got to move someone's social status when you capture them. You have to change their social status. If they were free men, you got to make them thralls. If they were slaves, you get to make them free,
Well, yeah. Yeah, that's...
You got to change. You can't just leave them as they were.
Yeah, I get it.
And he is convinced now that he's got two gods looking out for him, and that has stiffened more than just his resolve. I mean his right arm. I don't know why you're laughing.
Right. I figured that's what you meant. Well, Moqorro says that R'hllor is showing him that Victarion has glory awaiting for him. Yeah. And as we discussed, Moqorro's batting average is pretty good when it comes to flame prognostication. So if I were Victarion, I would be thinking, this is in my future. If Moqorro says he saw it, Moqorro says he saw it.
Right. That's a very good point. Yeah, I mean, if you set aside the point that Moqorro might be just using you to get himself to Meereen, you're right. Everything else he said has come to pass. So why shouldn't the you being glorious come to pass? Yeah. Especially if you're pre-inclined to believe in your future glory anyway, as Victarion clearly is.
Right. Yeah. Now Moqorro could be setting him up. He could be setting him up with all these small victories, showing that he can see the truth in the future in the flames.
Right. To make his big lie more believable.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, like I said earlier, both suitors, the Iron and the Spurned, plan to win a dragon. Now, they ultimately plan to win Daenerys with a dragon. Although, the Iron suitor, Victarion here, he has bigger aim than just winning Daenerys. He wants to win the freedom of the Iron Islands through her and the dragons.
Right.
Which is a bit... If that's your end goal, is... winning Daenerys through her dragons and binding at least one dragon to you, I feel like the Iron Islands is a bit of a small target.
Yes.
You're going to win Daenerys Targaryen, the rightful heir to the Iron Throne, and dragons. And you're thinking, I'm going to do something even my brother didn't do. I'm going to free the Iron Islands. It's like, well... yeah, you could, or...
Yeah, that is a very interesting point, because of course, you could instead aim for the Iron Throne. But if you take the Iron Throne, the Iron Islands remain a part of the Seven Kingdoms, and so you haven't done that other thing, which you might see as in some ways more glorious, even though it's a smaller goal for yourself.
Yeah, what would you do? Would you make them their own independent kingdom?
Well, no, you wouldn't. That's the thing, you see. If you're Victarion and you take the Iron Throne, the last thing you're going to want to do is let your ancestral home secede. No way.
Yes, right. Yeah.
So yeah, it's maybe goes to his sort of like narrow mindset that that's all he can see, But interestingly, with the dragon, you might, if Daenerys comes back into the Seven Kingdoms, a la Aegon the Conqueror, he might need to keep the dragon in order to keep the Iron Islands free. Because if he gives up the dragon, gives up the claim to the Iron Throne, and says, I'll take the Seastone chair as King of the Iron Islands and we'll go our separate ways, she might eventually turn on him. Because you know what he'll probably do, like day 4 of his reign? he'll probably send out people to go and reeve the east coast, the west coast of Westeros, and that's going to annoy the new queen with her dragons.
Yeah, that makes some sense for sure. Now, between the two methods, like we discussed, Quentyn using his ancestral Targaryen blood and Victarion using the Dragonhorn, I personally would prefer Victarion's method because you can do it from so much further away than...
Yes, yeah. Because what's Quentyn going to do? Sort of like, like prick his finger so that they can smell his blood and then come down the stairs and hope for the best.
Yeah, if you blow that horn and nothing happens, well, nothing ventured, nothing gained, you know?
Right. If you go and pat one of the dragons and they don't like you, then
yeah,
the game's going to end pretty quickly after that.
Exactly. But are we looking at, or are we currently discussing the other two heads of the dragon? Is this going to be the three heads?
Possibly.
Yeah. We'll find out, hopefully.
Yeah. But probably not in the next chapter, because the next chapter has a slightly mean name. It's called The Ugly Little Girl.
Yes. Kind of rude. But
a little bit rude.
Well, we could take conjectures about who that is.
I've got one. I think I'm right.
I think you are too.
Okay. All right, there's 3 ways that you can help us. You can leave us a 5-star rating and possibly a review. You can buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostsharrenhal. There you can join us at any of the various sustainer levels. There's a tier to match your budget and interest, and all tiers are available for a week for free. Or you can make a donation directly to our cause at our website, ghostsofharrenhal.buzzsprout.com.
And if you're looking for more ways to interact with us, well, one thing you could do is you could send us a text. The link is at the top of every episode's show notes. And if you're interested in keeping up on the latest Ghosts of Harrenhal news and developments, well, I suggest you go check us out on our social media. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghost Harrenhal, or on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.